Okay, so there is nothing more misunderstood than the discussion surrounding muscle memory as it pertains to competitive gaming. You see, it's this notion that if you change your sensitivity even once, it could destroy your muscle memory that you spent weeks, if not months, if not even years building up. Now, this doesn't just affect sense. This also affects things like your field of view. It affects things like your dead zones if you're on controller. And as a result, unfortunately, so many people get caught up in this situation where they want to change these settings, but unfortunately they feel like they can't. But is this the truth? The answer to that question is no. If anything, not changing your sense deliberately could actually be holding you back from improvement. There's anecdotal and empirical evidence to go off of, and I'm going to cover that here in this video. Okay, so I have no doubt in my mind you've heard of the player Pertains. Now, he is actually known for not only changing his sensitivity countless times during a single live stream, but he's also known for doing this in tournaments. In fact, not only does he change his sense in tournaments countless times, but he actually changes his mouse. This is interesting, right? Because if he's doing this while he's at a tournament, if we're going based on this notion that muscle memory dictates everything, it's all that matters, how is he still able to perform at his best when he needs to perform at his best the most? He even changed his mouse mid-game, and if I quote correctly, he still continued to dominate the other team. What about Shroud? Right, certainly respectable in his own right, a top aimer in my eyes, perhaps for you as well. Now, he does not use a sensitivity calculator to ensure he is playing at a sense he likes. He goes, get this, completely based on feel. As you can imagine, he's not afraid to change his sense depending upon the mechanics of the game that he's playing as well. These are only two examples, but I wanted to provide these because I think just about everyone knows who these guys are. They're very talented. But in fact, if you look at all of the top aimers in the world, you'd be hard-pressed to find a single one of them that believes that changing your sensitivity is inherently bad for you. This is all great information, but how could this be holding you back from improving your aim? I'll solidify my point with an analogy. Now, let's say you go to the gym a few times a week. Every single day that you go to the gym, you're going to be working out different muscle groups. The reason behind doing this is pretty obvious, but changing your sensitivity is almost exactly like going to the gym and working out different muscle groups intentionally. You see, when you change your sensitivity, you're then working with different muscle groups that you would otherwise not be working with. You play Halo, so you probably play on a very slow sensitivity, which means you're relying a lot on arm aiming. Let's say you increase your sense. It's much faster now. Well, now you're going to be aiming a lot in the wrist, and if it's even fast enough, you're actually going to be aiming a lot in the fingers as well. This helps you to establish better mouse control. You see, it's not about muscle memory. It's about mouse control and technique.
Rather than muscle memory, because muscle memory kind of makes you like lazy and stuff, it's just mouse control, not muscle memory. I could go on an aim lab, play like two different scenarios with two drastically different senses and get relatively same
You
score.
can make the argument that you only ever want to aim with your arm. There's no reason for you to aim with your wrist, right? Well, whatever you say, there are those moments where you need to rely on your wrist or fingers. And in those moments, you will fail unless you have that proper mouse control and technique. This is why in every single aim training guide out there, they will tell you to change your sensitivity based on the type of aiming and scenario it calls for. This is why you should be changing your sense depending upon the game that you're playing as well. Are you training static dots? Well, generally speaking, it's going to be easier to play on a slower sensitivity. Are you training reactive tracking 10 minutes later? Well, generally speaking, you want to play on a much faster sensitivity. Or if you want to make the scenario more difficult, you can do the exact opposite of what I just said, and that will help you to establish better mouse control. Also, it's important to recognize that you will need to make adjustments through long gaming sessions. Let's say you start the day off, you are very much so caffeinated and you are jittery. Well, you want to decrease your sensitivity and you do that. But let's say 4 hours in, the caffeine is wearing off. Now your sensitivity feels too slow. Do not be afraid to increase it. Remember, you are dynamic and not static. But let's say you have changed your sense in the past, and every time you have, you swear that you have to spend an equal amount of time building up that muscle memory. This is a mental block. You see, if this sounds like you, if you change your sense and suddenly you're the worst aimer in the lobby, that's because your mouse control is really, really bad. And we're human, right? It takes time to readjust. If you've been arm aiming for 10 years and you've never deviated from that, of course you are going to suck at aiming with your wrist and fingers. This is all the more reason to continue to change your sense and work on those habits that you haven't developed. So should you change your sense in increments or should you do it all at once? If you ask this question, you are not hearing what I'm saying. You can change your sense as often or as frequently as you like. Yes, it's going to hurt up front. It's going to expose your lack of mouse control and inaccurate technique. But that's a good thing in the long run. If at this point and you're still completely opposed to changing your sensitivity, Well, just understand that you are just not going to make the amount of progress in your aim that you want to see. You will continue to kind of perform where you always have been, and that's entirely up to you and your choice. Change is good. We are human. Change is necessary. So if you don't change anything, again, that's up to you. But at the same time, that would be kind of like doing the exact same thing every single day in the exact same way. It just doesn't make any sense. I should add, for most people. For most people, that wouldn't make sense. Now, for a long time, I believed this just as much as anyone else did. I was actually so extreme that I refused to play different games when I was on console because every game had its own unique aim assist and bullet magnetism set values. That's pretty extreme. But when I came over to PC and I started to realize that this is the truth, then I started making the most rapid progress in my aim training journey because I wasn't afraid to change my sense any longer. Down below, I have provided a link to a study that I want you to check out, whether you believe me now or if you don't. I will also link a Voltaic article that is very helpful. In the end, don't be surprised that if you actually take this advice, that you start making that rapid progress that I started making as well. And I hope you do.